So, one thing that has really helped me through lockdown is this. Hello everyone, my name is Amo and welcome to another video. Now, it is safe to say I've been on quite an emotional roller coaster of a Star Wars journey of late. I think I mentioned on my self-isolation vlog whilst on my then government-issued stroll that Disney Plus had finally been released in the UK. I'd waited like a good non-pirating boy to watch The Mandalorian legally, and me, was it worth the wait. The show did a great job of compelling me back into the world of Star Wars after what seemed like quite a while out the game since Rise of Skywalker. The only downside being that episodes were being released on a weekly basis, which just wasn't enough to feed my newly reignited Star Wars addiction. In order to feed that addiction, over the course of lockdown, I decided to rewatch all of the Star Wars films, obviously doing so in the order of 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and 7, 8, 9, like the Star Wars purist that I am. And everything was going great until I got to The Last Jedi, and I think I must have wiped this from my mind, or at least repressed the memories of it, because God, that film was a piece of and an utter insult to Star Wars fans. And the worst thing was, Rise of Skywalker wasn't released until May the 4th on Disney+, so I was left with this feeling for a while of, and it's weird to say this, but being let down and maybe a feeling of betrayal by our Disney overlords, essentially. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of lost my love for Star Wars a little bit at this point, and this might sound a bit extra to some, but I really do care about the galaxy far, far away. So, May the 4th came round and I obviously watched Rise of Skywalker, the first time since actually seeing it in the cinema. And fun fact, I actually boycotted seeing a Solo Story because I was that pissed off by The Last Jedi. And I wasn't actually going to see Rise of Skywalker either until I saw that one trailer which had Ian McDermott's Palpatine voice in it, and I was immediately drawn back in. Now, when I did see Rise of Skywalker for the first time, I was actually very satisfied when walking out of the cinema. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually shed a few tears a couple of times when seeing the film. The first time was during the Ben and Han Solo scene where Han comes back as a memory, but father and son always gets to me, and the second time was at the credits. Looking back, I think I was pretty emotional, particularly at the end of the film, because it had undone a substantial amount of damage caused by The Last Jedi, and at least somewhat salvaged the conclusion of the Skywalker saga, or so I thought at that time. I hadn't really thought about Rise of Skywalker since then, and it's sad to say I was living in blissful ignorance, because now, having watched the film for a second time through a less emotional lens, it's made me realise that there are a lot of problems with the film. I'm not going to go into immense detail because I really want to get into the main portion of this video, but I will mention my biggest gripe with the film, and that is the distinct lack of Anakin Skywalker, who I think could have been used in really cool ways. One way could have been for him to initially come back as a Vader Force ghost and confront Kylo Ren, asking him, is this what he really wants to become him? And then the armour could fade away and reveal Hayden Christensen portraying an Anakin Force ghost. He could have explained to Kylo that his life, once he turned to the dark side, morphed into one of pain, anger, misery, and suffering, essentially, and it could have pushed him back towards the light. To my knowledge, we haven't really seen Anakin open up in this way about his past mistakes, and I think it would be really interesting to see some learning and character growth even after death. Then that scene could have led on to the Ben and Han Solo scene, leading to a double whammy of tear-jerking emotional goodness. Another way could have been a similar interaction with Rey that would keep her towards the light side of the Force, but also provide her with some information or training that would be vital to overcoming Palpatine. For example, having been a Force ghost for an extended period of time at this point, Anakin could have taught Rey about the cosmic side of the Force, which has only been touched on really in the Mortis episodes of the Clone Wars series when it comes to current canon. I don't think the cosmic and living Force concepts would be too difficult to explain to mainstream audiences, plus I think it would have made the whole be with me stuff a lot more palatable. Rey could then go on to channel the power of the Jedis of the past to use against Palpatine, leading to a great moment where a bunch of Force ghosts join Rey in the Sith Temple to then eradicate the Sith. Not only would this have been a much more palatable of endings, but it would have also grounded Rey a lot and showed she actually needed some sort of training as opposed to just being OP throughout the entire new trilogy saga. And Anakin is the chosen one after all, the one said to bring balance to the Force, so I feel he should have had a much more significant role in the conclusion of the Skywalker saga. If you compare Rise of Skywalker to Avengers Endgame and you put the final acts side by side, Endgame just brings about so many more moments that induce satisfaction to viewers, as sexual as that sounds. But Rise of Skywalker's finale wasn't the one that fans who have been following the saga and the series for decades deserved. So, as you can probably tell, even after watching Rise of Skywalker, I was still feeling pretty down about one of my most beloved franchises. So, I thought, f*** it, why don't I write some Star Wars stories? But it's not like Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni are going to come knocking at my door anytime soon asking me about where I think the direction of this multi-billion-dollar franchise should go. So I wanted to have some sort of purpose for writing the story, and then it hit me. D&D. Why don't I write a Dungeons and Dragons campaign? At least that way then my story will be used to some extent and hopefully enjoyed by my mates and I. So that's what I'm about to do. To give a bit of background, I'm still very much a D&D noob. I've probably played around 10 to 15 times. I've never been a DM before, so this could be quite a steep learning curve, but I've wanted to give my dungeon mastering a go, so what better opportunity than this. Now, the first thing I thought I'd do is write the general plot of the campaign. I honestly don't know if this is the right way of going about this. In the eyes of many DMs out there, more experienced DMs, I may be doing things completely wrong, but I'm sure it'll work out. At this point, I should say to my main D&D crew, Dungeons and Drag Queens, or to anyone who's already agreed to help me test this campaign out, would you kindly
get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly
switch off now, as you'll only be spoiling what will be a sick-ass Star Wars story for yourselves. Okay, 3, 2, 1. You'll bet be gone now. Alright, so when it came to actually writing the campaign itself, I gave myself 2 rules. 1, try and make the story fit into current Star Wars canon. And 2, for it to not be An extra semi-rule I gave myself was to try and include elements of different pieces of Star Wars content in the campaign. So whether it be the main films, the animated series, namely Clone Wars and Rebels, the video games, and even draw upon legends if necessary, which I'm not too overly familiar with but could come in handy. Basically, I wanted some chunky amounts of fan service because I know my mates are well versed with Star Wars content, so hopefully they'll get a kick or two out of the many Easter eggs I'm intending on laying in this campaign. Wait, do you lay Easter eggs? Is that the right terminology? Anyway, I had 2 ideas in terms of Star Wars stories. The first was that the players were bounty hunters hired by good old Jabba the Hutt to track down and kill Hondo from Clone Wars and Rebels, because I think me doing the voices of both would be either hilarious or hilariously trash. Banta pudu, ho 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 ho. No, well. Insolence? We are pirates. We don't even know what that means. That's alright. Was it? Probably not. Anyway, I think bounty hunters would be fairly easy to do in terms of character creation because I wouldn't have to worry about the Force, essentially. And the one thing I would have to worry about is the blasters, but I'm sure there's an easy workaround for that.
The second idea I had was for the players to play as Jedi set a short time, or a few years before the events of Episode 1. Yoda had felt a disturbance in the Force and he sent a group of Jedi Masters to investigate said disturbance.
The second idea is definitely a bit more ambitious due to the powers Jedi possess, and I thought I'd have to create rule sets for them. However, quite fortuitously, Unearthed Arcana released a new playtest which contains psionic subclasses, and the Psi-Knight in particular seems to be quite on the money when it comes to Jedis and their various powers. For those who don't know, Unearthed Arcana is basically additional content for D&D. New editions are released periodically and it essentially gives players and DMs more to work with. Playtest content means that it's just material that hasn't been tested yet, so it may be unbalanced. With the new psionic options, moving objects with the Force, Force pushing, leaping great distances, and Jedi mind tricks all seem to be covered, so I think I'm going to roll with this for now, unless anyone in the comments wants to advise me on a better alternative route to take. In either case, I think the Jedi storyline is very doable for players, so I'm going to push ahead with this for now. Now, this is going to be my general plot of the core story. I don't want to railroad players, obviously, but this is where I'd ideally like the story to go. Initially, I was going to have Yoda feel his disturbance on Dathomir, because after watching Rise of Skywalker to make myself feel better, I decided to watch Clone Wars properly for the first time and re-watch Rebels. Dathomir features pretty heavily in the prior, and I thought it'd be really good for players to experience those kind of enemy types and various enemy types that the planet has to offer. However, on reflection, I realised that we'd seen Dathomir quite recently in Jedi Fallen Order, so I thought it might be a bit of overkill. Also, I want my players to visit a Sith Temple, and we kind of got a hint of that on Dathomir with Malicos. So I decided to switch it up. After watching the final season of Clone Wars, watching Rebels again, and my nerdy boner at the minute for The Mandalorian, I thought what better location to switch it to than Mandalore. Okay, so here's how the story is going to go in my head. We begin our story finding Master Yoda in deep meditation at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. He notices that his visions, or his Force visions, are appearing to him with far less clarity than in prior years. For those who don't know, the Jedi Temple on Coruscant was actually built on top of a Sith shrine, which contained in it a sacred spire that acted as a powerful Force nexus. Palpatine used this to cloud the visions of the Jedi so they could not predict the future as accurately, and used this to aid his rise to power in the prequel trilogy. Yoda sees a vision of a figure who is cloaked, dressed entirely in black, and wielding two lightsabers, one red and one purple. He sees this figure slowly move towards a cave entrance, and beside him are the bones of a gargantuan creature. The figure suddenly stops at the cave entrance, turns, and looks back as if looking directly at Yoda himself. Classic dramatic trope there. Yoda awakes and then says the word, Mandalore. Players are then summoned before the council, and they are briefed on this mission by members who would have been present during episode 1. So Masters Yoda, Mace Windu, Plo Koon, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Adi Gala, Eth Koth, Even Peel, and Sassine Teen. These Jedi, I believe, have featured in either live action or animated content. The players are then given their coordinates and they go to Mandalore in Starfighters. So I did some research into any cool settings that I could have my players arrive at when they start to conduct their investigation on Mandalore, and I came across the City of Bone. The City of Bone is an amusement park on Mandalore that never actually opened. It was used as an Imperial stronghold shortly after the Clone Wars, and later on was used as a hub for the Imperial's slaving and mining operations. The park featured an oversized replica of a mythosaur skeleton. Mythosaurs are native to Mandalore, they're big old beasts, and they're actually the symbol of the planet. I don't know exactly when the amusement park was built and then subsequently abandoned, but if it was occupied soon after the Clone Wars, then it may already work within my timeline. But I think all the City of Bone stories are retconned now anyway, so I think I'm allowed within my rules to re-canonize it a little bit earlier. So the players come to the abandoned amusement park and they can have a little mooch around, eventually finding a way to turn the power back onto the park. At that point, they can probably have a encounter with some relatively weak creatures. I'm thinking some Fandrels, which are native to Mandalore. The power is restored to the park and the players can then wander around the amusements if they wish. I'm planning on having a bunch of different stalls set up where the Jedi can have a go at various carnival-based games but using the Force, and on the different stalls there'll be droids embedded within them, so you can have different droid voices for the different games that they play. One of the droids I'm planning on using is AP5 from Rebels, who is basically Alan Rickman's Snape in droid form.
I should be frightened, but I'm strangely calm. The silence, solitude. This is beautiful. I'm in a world all my own. I do not feel alone. It's easy to see I fit perfectly in this wonderful, beautiful No, go away. I was so happy.
Eventually the players will hear the sound of a massive vehicle in the distance, and I'm hoping they'll investigate. That'll turn out to be a sandcrawler full of Jawas who, when they see the Jedi, the Jawas will go back and retreat into the sandcrawler but hurl a bunch of impact grenades right at the Jedi. The players can use the Force to try and protect themselves, but they'll end up directing the impact grenades downwards. The floor around them starts to crumble and they end up falling into a newly created chasm, and they are then knocked out by the fall. Some time passes and the Jedi awake. They can see it's no longer daytime as the space around them is being dimly lit via moonlight that is coming through the hole above them. I'm hoping one of them has the bright idea of turning on their lightsaber. The lightsabers will immediately illuminate the space around the Jedi and will showcase the large open space that looks to be some sort of mine they've fallen into, and will also reveal the mythosaur skeleton before them. They then suddenly hear a low bellowing voice almost in the winds of the mine that says, Jedi. The torches around the mine all light up and the players are then presented with two paths. One of the paths I haven't quite decided on yet, but it will feature some sort of narrative, expansion-y side quest. But the other one will lead to a Sith Temple, which is where the real fun begins. So this is a bit of a curveball, but the next bit of the story is inspired by a Bruce Lee film called Game of Death. So the film is most well known for its final act, where Bruce is wearing his iconic yellow jumpsuit, and the film is just amazing. The climax of the film featured a very video gamey plot where Bruce has to go to a pagoda and go up the levels of the pagoda. At each level of the pagoda is a boss that Bruce has to defeat before going on to the next level. In the film, the pagoda was supposed to feature 5 floors, but sadly, Bruce died during the making of the film, so complete scenes were only shot for 3. The final boss right at the top of the pagoda was famously Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and my biggest memory from that film is when Kareem lands a first kick on Bruce right in the chest, and it imprints his giant footprint right on that yellow biker suit. Anyway, I digress. So the players will make their way to the Sith Temple, where in order to enter, they'll have to answer a riddle, similar to that one scene from Lord of the Rings where they have to enter Moria in a similar fashion, but mine will be far more stupid. Now, I love puns, and Star Wars puns are some of my personal favourites, so I am probably going to be breaking my canonical rule for one tiny moment of the story here, but it's all in good fun, so I'm hoping I'll be cut some slack here. For those interested, some of these puns will be along the lines of, what do you call a astromech who always likes to take the long journey? R2-D2. What do you call a really powerful water gun in the Star Wars universe? A super Ahsoka. What's the most popular ice cream flavour on Kashyyyk? Wookiees and cream. And what's one of my other ones? Oh yeah, what Ben Affleck film did Liam Neeson make an unknown appearance in? Qui-Gon Girl, or what's my other one? Oh yeah, what do Jedi use to open PDF files? Adobe One Kenobi. I don't care what anyone says, that is some A-grade punmanship in my book anyway. The players will enter the temple and will quickly come across the hooded figure that Yoda described to them at the start of the campaign. This interaction will be similar to how Yoda interacted with Darth Bane in the Clone Wars series. To my knowledge, the dark side users haven't really mastered the Force Ghost technique in the same way Jedis have, but they can do so in a way when they are attached to some sort of object or temple. I'm going to have to wing a lot of the dialogue between the Force Ghost and the players, as it will depend a lot on player responses, but eventually the Force Ghost will reveal himself to be none other than Darth Revan, who you KOTOR fans will know a great deal about. Personally, I feel Darth Revan is one of the most fascinating characters in all of the Star Wars mythos, be it Legends or current canon. For those who don't know, Revan was a prevalent figure in the Old Republic, which takes place a few thousand years before the Skywalker saga. Now, he was a Jedi prodigy who trained under various different masters. He often rebelled against the Jedi Council, and he flighted between the light and dark sides of the Force. Also, the fact that he fought in the Mandalorian Wars, he dons a Mandalorian helmet, and pretty much all of his story at the moment is retconned, I believe. So I thought it'd be a great figure to use in my campaign. After revealing himself, Revan tells the players that the Jedi have testing times ahead of them, and he holds information that the Jedi Council would very much like to know. However, in order to attain this information, the Jedi must prove themselves worthy. I'm calling the next bit the Trials of Darth Revan, where Revan will urge the players to complete his various tests in order to reveal more information that they seek. Now, what I'm planning on doing is having various stages where the players will have to fight famous creatures from the Star Wars universe, and if I can figure out how to do this shit, do puzzles as well. The creatures I was thinking of using were Wampas, Acklays, Nexas, Rancors, and maybe even the Mythosaur skeleton itself. I was also thinking about doing some sort of doppelganger battle where the Jedi will face Sith versions of themselves, and maybe have them even fight Revan at the end, where maybe an apparition of Revan actually, but then again, I hate that trope in films where it was all just a dream, or in this case a Force vision, so I'll probably avoid using that shtick. In between each trial, Revan will appear to give tidbits of information and eventually reveal the prophecy of the Chosen One, because in episode 1 we don't really know where that information came from or how long ago it was discovered. So I think in current canon I can do this, and what cooler origin would it be than to have Darth Revan provide this prophecy. Also, there's that one deleted scene in the Mortis episodes of the Clone Wars series where the son goes to meet Darth Bane and Darth Revan, who tell him that there is one who will control the universe, the Chosen One, the one who will control Skywalker, will control all. So I think this is quite fitting. So that's where I've got to with the story so far. I think it's pretty good, but I'm obviously very biased. But There was one other element that I did want to try and add, but I couldn't find a canonically sound way of including it, and that was to have Darth Revan present the Jedi with the Darksaber at the end of their trials. In the current canon, the Darksaber was stolen from the Jedi Temple by the Vizsla family, and it stayed with them until we saw the Darksaber with pre-Vizsla in the Clone Wars. I was thinking that something could happen to the saber that would have made it end up at the temple, which I guess doesn't really need to be explained for the purposes of this story, but the latter half of that portion, my plan was to have the Jedi go back to their starfighters, think their journey is all over, but then the Vizsla clan members turn up to try and retrieve the saber, and a Mandalorian versus Jedi battle could ensue. There could be a crazy concluding fight where the Mandalorians are jetpacking all over the place and the Jedi have to bring them down using the Force or lightsaber throws or whatever. It'd actually be really cool to see how the players choose to fight in that particular battle. In any case, the Vizsla clan would end up retrieving the Darksaber from whichever player has it, and that would keep everything canonically sound, I think, so I'd still be adhering to the rules that I've set myself. The Jedi can then return to Coruscant, and that would be the end of this tale, this campaign, if I make this a one-shot. But I guess I could set this quite a few years before episode 1, so this ragtag group of Jedi could then go on other adventures maybe in the future. But it all depends on how this first campaign goes. If people like it, I'll continue it, but if not, I'll keep it to just this glorious one-shot. In any case, I'll try and release episode 2 of this series in 2 weeks' time. I think that episode is going to feature more how I'm going to actually do things mechanically speaking. So what monsters am I going to use, or what stats of which existing monsters in Dungeons & Dragons am I going to use for the various monsters that I'm going to do, how am I going to do the puzzles, just sort of flesh out things a bit more in that sense. So that's my plan of attack. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about my story in the comments. Any experienced DMs out there, if you could give me any tips and tricks, that would be really handy. Until next time, people, there is always a bigger fish.